And Renee's audio should join us now then.
I haven't heard anything from her, so she must be in.
She texted me when I was on the, she's getting in right now.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody that's jumping in. Okay, Renee, I have you unmuted if you want to just press *6 to give it a test.
Hi, Sierra. This is Renee.
Perfect.
Now I will.
And Renee, just to let you know, I think Becky said she was just going to do an audio description of herself. That way everybody can know that. If you wanted to do that when you start, that's fine too.
Ooh, I hadn't given that much thought.
Yeah, I was going to do that. And Sierra, I think I am not going to have my video on there because I will be looking down some at some of my notes when we're doing some additional information, and I wouldn't be looking at the screen anyhow. So it would look like I'm not even interested in my own presentation if I'm looking down all the time. So I just took my camera off. So I just wanted to let you know what I decided there.
That's fine.
Oh, I just got your message just now, Renee. That's why I didn't answer you. Sorry.
That's all right. I finally got through.
Takes a while to get things out in Texas, I guess.
Yeah, you're way out there.
Yeah. The grandkids just can't understand, like how far it is. Like, why can't Nana just drive here to visit them? And, even showing them on a map, a 5.5-year-old doesn't get that distance. So
I've been looking for a jigsaw puzzle that is suitable for kids about, the age of a little older, but basically about your grandkids. Just show them the United States. I don't know why, but I can't find that.
Michael's Arts and Crafts store have lots of good geographical puzzles.
Michael's Arts and Crafts? Okay. Might have solved my problem.
We do our Black Friday shopping, and that's where I get a lot of that kind of stuff there every year.
I don't know, Becky, if you quickly how would you audio describe me?
I would say, I guess I don't know if, I don't know, sometimes I've read different things, whether just saying somebody's ethnicity is important or not, but I guess maybe in this case, I would say a white female, short stature, even though they can't, if they saw us, it would just be from probably shoulders up, but dark curly hair, dark eyes. Maybe you want to say dark curly hair with bangs, maybe, and dark eyes.
Not anymore. Not because of the pandemic. I decided
okay, well,
I better just let them
I would be
grow
good.
out.
I would be good at describing you. So I guess because I'm going to say to myself, I'm a white female. I have light brown hair. It's parted on the side, and I'm white, and I have blue eyes, and I wear glasses.
Okay. yeah, I don't know what you'd call. I'm not really light. I don't know. I have some of those Cherokee features, like the really dark eyes and the high cheekbones,
do.
and I think
Yeah.
well, that's my background. I don't know if you'd call that like, I don't know, olive skin tone. I don't know what to call it. I think I'll just skip that part and just say the some Cherokee features. I have some Cherokee background, so I have some very dark, long dark hair, very dark eyes, and high cheekbones. But anyway,
There you
I think
go.
I'll let it go with that.
Sierra, will there be a way for us then to know, or Sierra's gone, isn't she?
Oh, she's here.
Oh, is there a way for us then to know a total how many folks attended?
Right now we have 27, but it's in the, if you go to your menu bar on our side, there's a participants thing, and you can pull it up and see how many attendees are there.
All right, menu bar on our side. Do I need to get rid of the chat?
So it's on the same place you found the chat. You'll see little people.
Well, maybe more. No. Oh, participants. There we go. 34. Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
Never mind.
Growing all the time.
Yeah, I was just like, I was telling Cherie, I said, like, I'm never nervous when I do in-person trainings, but this one's making me a little nervous. And it's not because I don't know the material. It's just kind of like, I guess maybe because, you know, we're not going to get feedback. We're not going to be able to read the participants' faces. We're not going to be able to tell if they got a quiz on their face. We don't get to get that give and take, which is, you know, so much fun about the April presentations.
Join my world.
Yeah. Now that's something you experience most of the time, huh, Renee?
I do know what you mean, though.
10 o'clock, Sierra.
Yep, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Scott Birkenbill, and I'm an April board member and facilitator of the call today. Thank you for joining us for this workshop, audio description. What is up?
Hi, everyone. This is Renee Cummins from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I am a female, white and Cherokee mixed. I have very long, dark hair and very dark eyes and prominent cheekbones. And the thing that I want you to know about our presentation today is that I am a person with significant low vision all my life, so I depend upon audio description as my means to provide effective communication. And I'll turn it over to my co-presenter.
Hi, everyone. Renee and I are excited to be doing this presentation, although it's a little different for all of us. My name is Rebecca Williams. I am the lead information specialist with the Southeast ADA Center, and I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I am a white female. I have shoulder-length light brown hair, light blue eyes, and I wear glasses. So that is my intro. Next slide. I have to always do a little bit of blurb about our funding. The Southeast ADA Center is funded by NIDLR, which is the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. Next slide.
So this is Renee, and this slide is our standard disclaimer from the Southeast ADA Center. Don't be intimidated by all that text. Essentially what this says, and the point we want to get across today, is that our presentation is for informal guidance only, and it is not intended to be a determination of your legal rights and responsibilities. Next slide.
Okay, so what is audio description? Now, some of you may already have a little bit of an idea what it is, but we're just going to kind of go on the assumption that we're just, nobody knows what's going on here. So audio description is also referred to as visual description. And what it does, it provides the spoken information about key visual elements in a visual experience. Audio description is not just for the performing arts. Any event or exhibit that contains visual information may be audio described, which provides people with vision loss a more complete picture of museum exhibits, parades, public events, films, websites, cruise ships, and many more things. Sometimes audio description is accomplished through technology such as a track on a TV or movie audio feed. In the theater, it's often performed by a describer talking into a microphone or sort of like a court reporter's stenographer's mask, sending FM signals throughout the audience. The patron who is using the service has a receiver with an earbud or other auditory device. Many venues provide audio description via separate channel on their existing assistive listening systems. And these descriptions in live theater are inserted into the natural pauses in the program's dialogue. One big difference between audio description, where audio description is provided versus ASL interpreting, say like at a live event, folks with hearing loss and who rely on interpreters for effective communication generally have to sit in the same area so that the interpreter can be seen. With audio description, patrons can sit anywhere they want in the movie theater. So they could be down front, they could be in the wings, they could be up in the balcony. In addition to offering information about visual description, audio description offers a measure of independence to people with vision loss. No longer do they have to rely on a companion to tell them what's happening on stage. They can receive detailed information from a professional describer via a headset and enjoy the show independently. Next slide.
This is Renee. So who uses audio description? Well, obviously, people like me with any degree of vision loss, we very much depend on audio description in order to get effective communication and access information that otherwise would not be available to us. But we have feedback from other people who have used audio description that indicates it's far beyond just those of us with vision loss. For example, people on the autism spectrum or other people that have any kind of distractibility feature and find it very difficult to focus on what is important and what is really a detail or something that is going to just be a distraction and they're going to miss the main point. People that have that kind of combination have told us that the audio description very much helps them to focus and to not miss the important event that is going on or the information about that event. Also, people who have English as a second language, we've gotten the same kind of feedback that having that much information coming at them may be too much to be able to sort through and know exactly what is important. So the audio description information actually sifts through all of that information that's coming at a person and helps them to be able to focus on what is the most important and to be able to get the gist of what is going on. Also, we have gotten feedback that people who have any kind of, this would probably be more clear if it said print language processing, and that's what we mean by that fourth point on there. People that have any kind of difficulty in being able to access print. So for example, somebody with dyslexia or any particular reading disability might have trouble in an environment where there's lots and lots of print information to be accessed and processed. But having audio description helps a person who otherwise would be having a lot of problems processing all of that printed information. So a good example of this that I've experienced is the National Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. If any of you have ever been to that museum, you know that when you enter, you get taken immediately to the top floor, And then in order to exit the museum, you essentially have to work your way down all of the floors and through all of the exhibits in order to come back out. And en route, there is a lot of information that is print all over the walls and a lot of visual stuff that you need to be able to access in order to appreciate that museum and what it has to offer. For me, that is totally all inaccessible. For people with any kind of print language processing difficulty, it would be very difficult except for the things that are just visual with no print. But the good news is that you can request an audio describer to accompany you if you go to that museum, and that person will go to the top and come all the way down with you. And the last category that we have here that we know are people who also can benefit from having an audio describer are people that primarily have an auditory learning mode. So in other words, they learn best by hearing information rather than having to visually get information, or even to be a person who learns well with a tactile kinesthetic learning by doing. There are people that auditory is their best means of processing information. And so those are people too for whom taking what essentially is visual information and turning it into auditory information through audio description seems to be a really benefit and will help them to access the information that they're looking for and not to miss the point. So audio description goes far beyond people with vision loss in terms of who can use and who can benefit from it. And we're sure we haven't captured every category of people here, but these are just some suggestions about how it's far broader than just considering those of us with vision loss. Next slide.
Hi, this is Rebecca. One thing I forgot to mention when we were introducing ourselves is I am a professionally trained audio describer. And at times, Renee and I will both bring our personal experiences with description into this presentation. And so I did want to comment when Renee was speaking about folks, some individuals on the autism spectrum may find audio description helpful, or people who just get sensory overload. Many, many years ago, though, when I was doing an audio description, the other describer and I were talking with a family who we knew personally, and their son, who was late elementary school, I believe, is on the autism spectrum. And the mother reported to us that they had never been able to stay for the entire performance of a live Broadway show. That typically by the intermission, they had to leave because their son was just on sensory overload. And they tried description, and it was the first time they were able to stay for the entire show, because when visually he just couldn't handle it anymore, he put his earbuds in and closed his eyes and was able to remain. So that was when I started to really realize that description could be useful for more than just people with vision loss, as Renee said. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about why might somebody want to provide description. Well, there are several federal laws that require it. The first law is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which requires state and local government entities, which is known as Title II under the ADA, and then public accommodations, which are businesses and also include nonprofit organizations, to provide what's known as effective communication for individuals with communication impairments such as speech, hearing, and vision loss. And the requirement is so that people with communication impairments get the same information and can understand what is going on and can communicate effectively. So that's the one that most people think about first, is the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, another law is Section 508 of the 1973 Rehabilitation Act, which requires federal agencies to make all their electronic and information technology accessible to people with disabilities. So this would involve websites of federal agencies to provide description or alt text description of pictures and graphs and whatever they're showing. The third law that we want to talk about briefly is the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act. And there are some specific, and I think we get into this later, it requires a certain number of hours of TV programming to have audio description, and it's in certain markets. Right now there have to be cities with a population over X number of people to have this requirement. When the ADA was passed and the regulations were written and the statutes were written, audio description wasn't really thought about. So it's taken a while for people to get on board, and oftentimes folks might say, well, there's no court cases, there's nothing that really says I have to provide audio description. But on April 30th, 2010, audio description was adjudicated as, quote, clearly an auxiliary aid and service, unquote, under the Americans with Disabilities by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in the case State of Arizona versus Harkins. So I only bring that up to let you guys know that there has been at least one court case that says, yes, audio description is required. Next slide.
This is Renee. So Becky mentioned the Section 504 and Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 as amended. We know that it gets amended periodically, and the 1998 amendment of the Rehabilitation Act did add Section 508. And then Section 508, there is a very clear requirement of any federal anything provided by the federal government or procured, which just means bought by the federal government, to be used in its offerings must be accessible, and it must include audio description. So this means all of their electronic communication and information technology and any films, videos, multimedia, websites, any of that information technology and electronic communications must have audio description. Next slide.
Okay, this is Rebecca. I had mentioned I would get into a little bit more about the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act of 2010. And what this law requires, and this is enforced by the Federal Communications Commission, and what this law requires is that local TV station affiliates of ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC located in the top 60 TV markets, they must provide 87.5 hours per calendar quarter, and that comes to about 7 hours a week, of video described programming, of which 50 hours must be prime time TV and or children's programming. And out of that, 37.5 hours can be any type of programming shown between 6 a.m. and midnight. And there, folks can go, if you're interested in wondering if you think you live in one of the top 60 markets, and you can Google that to find out if you live in the top 60 markets. And then you can go to your individual or the individual TV station affiliates and ABC and CBS and find out, what's audio described. But just to give you guys a little bit of idea what is being described in these markets. On ABC, America's Funniest Home Videos, Blackish, The Rookies. On CBS, we have Blue Bloods, Criminal Minds. Fox, we have 911, Family Guy. Last Man Standing. On NBC is Brooklyn Nine, Chicago Fire, Will and Grace. And then, although PBS is not mandated to have shows audio described, many children's programs do. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is described. And then they have some adult shows like American Experience, American Masters, Independent Lens. And what is on our screen right now, we do have a a picture of a computer monitor with the Apple symbol and letters TV is on view on our screen. So that's what folks can see. Next slide, please. So this is Rebecca still. So where is audio description used? And we talked about this a little bit, and you can, on the slide, we have things like dance performances, displays, fashion shows, museums, tours, parades, trainings, conferences, presentations, presidential inaugurations. I can't remember if it was both or just the second inauguration of President Barack, but there was an audio describer for that. Of course, we talked about theaters, websites should have audio description. Excuse me. Basically, any time information is presented visually that is important to the overall experience for anyone in that particular situation, it's a good idea to have things described. And Renee, did you want to tell a little bit about one of your experiences, I think in your, I don't know if you want to call it the museum, but your White House experience?
This is Renee. Yeah, I was a member of a committee that met for like 3 years and planned accessibility in what subsequently opened during the Obama administration as the White House Visitor Center. And the reason why I was on that national committee to look at the accessibility issues is to advise on audio description. And if you're ever in Washington, D.C., and you go to the White House Visitor Center, which is very close to the White House, that you can get an idea of exactly all of the ramifications in as much detail as you're really interested in terms of touring the White House and being taken through audio described computer tours that take you everywhere and give you, you know, the level of detail that you want to get to. So that was a very interesting experience and got me into looking at a lot of detail on the White House. But then I also wanted to add with what Becky just said about all of the audio description that is provided on TV, crime scene investigation, CSI, any of that series of shows would not be the same for any of us with vision loss without the audio description. If you've ever watched that or take a look at it and imagine all of the visual stuff that goes on in a crime scene, and all of that gets described in glorious and gory detail. So that's about all I wanted to add.
This is Rebecca again, and now that Renee mentioned that, I did for a different conference, did an audio description training, and it was more of geared towards getting people to experience or try their hand at it. But there was somebody in the audience that brought up that could this be used in the court setting if there was a juror with vision loss and then there were visual, you know, they have evidence and, you know, it's in the plastic bag and I'm going to enter evidence number 13 here for the court record. So, and that was something I hadn't thought about. So absolutely, if a juror has vision loss and needs to understand what the evidence looks like in helping decide the outcome of a court case, that's another place it could be used. Before we move on, one of the things that's really critical when folks are requesting audio description is the folks responsible for handing out the equipment need to know where it is, and they need to make sure it's functioning before somebody goes to their seat or starts going through the museum or whatever, because best intentions are wonderful, but if folks are not aware of how to distribute the equipment and to make sure the batteries are good and it's operational, then it's ineffective. So that's something folks need to think about. And next slide, please.
Rebecca, this is Scott.
Yes, sir.
We have a Q&A from Michelle that's timely to this section here, and she would like to ask, why is there only a certain amount of time available for audio description, and will that time expand in the future?
If she's talking about the 21st Century Act, no, it won't go away in the future. It will increase in the future. I don't know why the Federal Communications Commission has limited at this point in time the number of hours that are required. Perhaps that's to also start to give these major networks time to increase the provision of description within their shows, because I don't personally don't know how much is involved in taking a show and getting that description done. But when the requirement first came out, I think it was only something like 15 or 20 top localities. And so every so many years, the number of locations where descriptions must be provided is increased, and the number of hours per quarter has increased. So it's not going to go away unless for some reason Congress amends the 21st Century Communications Video Description and Communications Act and would decrease it, but I can't see that happening. So it should only increase, and I hope that answers the question. If not, she can let us know.
This is Renee, and yeah, I'm going to touch upon that as we move ahead in the next few slides and talk about what happened in the beginning and where we are now. But Becky's right. The answer is that once it was instituted under the 21st Century Act, then it is intended through the regulations to continue to increase. But if we're ready to go on, we're going to take a very quick look at a walk down memory lane and take a look at the history of audio description in the United States. This is getting at how we arrived at where we are now, where we've come from, and how all of this evolved. So on this next slide, this is taking a look at early history. So I'm just going to hit some highlights and pretty quickly since we have a lot to cover today. In 1974, Gregory Frazier, who was a graduate student at San Francisco State University and later on became a professor there, but he was writing his master's thesis in the School of Broadcasting, and he wrote his thesis on accessibility to television for people with vision loss. So his thesis really developed some of the underlying audio description concepts that have continued to expand and develop over time. And this was definitely looking at scripted audio description. Then in 1981, Margaret and Cody Fansteel, that's how you pronounce that rather weirdly spelled name that's there. Margaret and Cody Fansteel were in Washington, D.C. by 1981, and they started the Metropolitan Washington Ear. That was the organization that they started to provide audio description for live theater. So instead of a scripted approach, they were taking an extemporaneous approach that could be used on any live action events. Then in 1986, this same organization, Metropolitan Ear, began collaborating with the National Park Service to provide audio description, and that has certainly expanded, and the National Park Service now provides lots and lots of audio description. And my friends in the National Park Service say, if you're going to any national parks, which right now we're not, but if you are in the future, to please contact them about 2 weeks or more in advance and tell them that you want to use the audio description. And that way someone will be queued up and ready to greet you when you get there, because I have been to national parks, like I was all the way out to Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, didn't know to do that, and did not get to take advantage of the audio description. Don't let that happen to you. And the final date on the early history is 1987. And again, the Washington Ear began collaborating with WGBH, which is out of Boston, but it was the WGBH Educational Foundation and Public Television Playhouse and the Public Broadcasting Service So like Becky said, public broadcasting service was not mandated in those requirements that she read to you, but they were already on board way back in 1987. And what they did was, with the assistance of WGBH, who provides the audio describers who are trained, they began providing audio description over the secondary audio programming channel, or the SAP, on your television, which brings you foreign language, but it also brings you audio description. And because public broadcasting service was on board at such an early time, audio description made it to shows like Sesame Street way back there. It's been audio described for a long, long time. Next slide. Okay, let's look at the history of audio description moving into the decade of the 90s. The 90s was a very active decade. So we know that in 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed, but also in 1990, WGBH, again, the same organization out of Boston that is training audio describers and providing audio description, they began with the the descriptive video service. And what that means is they were providing audio description for television far beyond that original collaboration that I just told you about. So now audio description, because it's available on that secondary audio programming channel, the SAP channel, it begins to show up in a lot more broadcast television. And also in 1990, really active year, and this I think is really remarkable, the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, yes, the Emmy people, they awarded 4 Emmys in 1990 for audio description. These are the technical awards that you usually don't see because they're not broadcast with all of the stars that come out and make their acceptance speeches and all, but they were already recognizing audio description in 1990 with 4 Emmy Awards. Also in 1992, WGBH began the MOPIX Access Project, and that MOPIX just stands for Motion Pictures. This means that they began providing audio description for first-run movies showing in regular theaters, motion pictures in theaters. And finally, in that decade, in 1995, what was significant is that the Audio Description International, which was a group of describers from around the world, because audio description was going on in other countries, they got together and held their first meeting, which was hosted by the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts here in our country. So the John F. Kennedy Center brought together audio describers from around the world who were affiliated with this Audio Description International organization at that time, and had a meeting with them at the Kennedy Center. Next slide. Now let's move into the 21st century so that we're catching up with what Becky was talking about with the 21st Century Communications Accessibility Act. So in the year 2000, the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, first implemented its rule that required audio description, but only in the top 25 television markets. And that was for only 50 hours per quarter. So like Becky was saying, if you did not happen to live in one of those top 25 television markets, then this mandate did not apply in your area. But it was a start. It started small. It has definitely expanded. This was a start, though, in the year 2000. In the year 2002, the Kennedy Center, which has been a major player in promoting audio description, the Kennedy Center came forward once again and coordinated and hosted a second meeting of the Audio Description International. So once again, to bring that group back together, but in our country, so that we could have people attend and hopefully get the benefits of being able to meet with an organization like that. And there were definite advantages and benefits that came from that meeting. In 2006, audio describers decided to hold their own meeting at the Leadership Exchange in Arts and Disabilities Conference, the LEAD conference as they call it. And that is an annual conference hosted at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in DC. So at that particular annual conference in 2006, the audio describers decided to set up their own meeting and to get together and to form an organization, which they did, and they called it the Audio Description Coalition. So that was the big outgrowth of the 2006 LEAD conference. And also in 2006, in California, the California Audio Describers Alliance, they had formed their own organization in California. The California Audio Describers Alliance got together and adopted California standards for audio description. So we had in this country the first attempt at coming up with standards so that there would be measurable standards and a code of ethics and a code of conduct for moving audio describers to the level of professionalism that would be somewhat parallel to the professionalism of qualified sign language interpreters, which is exactly where audio description needs to go. And so this was our start at moving down that path and in that direction to be able to elevate audio description to the level of a very highly recognized accommodation for all of us who need audio description for effective communication. Next slide. Let me get just a little sip of water. Go ahead, Becky.
So this is Rebecca. So how does audio description work? We have 6 clips here that we are going to show you. Each kind of has a different slant, well, not different slant, but uses audio description in a different way. The first one has no dialogue with it at all. It's a video clip of, well, it's just all visual. So that, of course, is shows us why audio description is very important. This clip is called "The Color of Paradise." And whenever you guys are ready to cue that up. Okay, I'm not hearing it.
Okay, give me one moment. I'm gonna stop.
Yeah,
sharing.
we folks in this webinar with us, we have done a run through and we had audio before, so.
All right, we should be good. I'll start it over.
Okay. Alrighty. Thanks.
Mohammed kneels and taps his hands through the thick round cover of brown curled leaves. A scrawny nestling struggles on the ground near Mohammed's hand. His palm hovers above the baby bird. He lays his hand lightly over the tiny creature. Smiling, Mohammed curls his fingers around the chick and scoops it into his hands. He stands and strokes its nearly featherless head with a fingertip. Mohammed starts as the bird nips his finger. He taps his finger on the chick's gaping beak. He tilts his head back, then drops it forward. Mohammed tips the chick into his front shirt pocket. Wrapping his legs and arms around a tree trunk, Mohammed climbs. He latches onto a tangle of thin upper branches. His legs flail for a foothold. Mohammed stretches an arm between a fork in the trunk of the tree and wedges in his head and shoulder. His shoes slip on the rough bark.
Okay, thank you for showing that one. For those of you unable to see the video clip, Muhammad is a young man. He wasn't described, but he was a young man, probably late elementary school, dark hair, and he is a person with vision loss himself. So the next video clip that we're going to show is a description of
Becky,
a video.
Becky, just say, this is Renee. I just wanted to say for that one that without the audio description, that would have been just nothing but sound effects for me. So, you know, like what bird and what pocket and, you know, what tree. So the fact that the audio description is saying everything that anyone that's watching it is seeing is an excellent demonstration of how that not only audio description not only adds, but sometimes it just fully stands on its own. And that was an example of where that happened for me. Okay, go ahead.
Great, thanks. So when I was looking for video clips for this, I never really thought of description for a video game. But for those of you who are gamers, you may find this clip kind of interesting, and it's called Fortnite Video Game.
I'm halfway up a spiral staircase while two other players fight below me. One advances and shoots while the other builds a fort. I shoot the advancing one in the back with a burst fire rifle, killing them, and then reload and head downstairs. I reach the bottom of the stairs and observe the other player's fort from afar. After a few moments, they pop their head out and fire at me, taking out my shields and prompting me to run for cover behind a tree. I reach the tree and start putting up some walls for additional cover. The other player shoots through some of them, so I put up a few more walls to box myself in. I take out my assault rifle and lie in wait for a few moments. The other player stays in their fort. I build a staircase to escape from the little enclosure I've built around myself, and hop over the wall to the outside. The other player shoots at me, and I return fire from behind my enclosure before taking out some remote explosives. I toss an explosive charge towards their fort, and accidentally place one on my own enclosure. I then retreat further back to another tree and detonate the explosives before reloading my rifle.
That I don't know if anybody noticed, that was told from the perspective of the individual playing the game. You know, it was in first person. So the next one, and I think just in light of time here, I know I went through and we had maybe about a minute and a half on each. Maybe we'll do just about 45 seconds on the remaining of these so that we can get to the rest of this and then Q&A. The next one is The Lion King, and the one thing I want folks to try to think about this is when there's songs and lyrics, a good describer is not going to describe over the song. They're going to describe in between the words. So folks might want to see if they can pick up on that one here in The Lion King, and we'll probably just do maybe 45 seconds of that. Thank you.
Hundreds of animals gather at the bottom of Pride Rock, a tall, flat ledge that towers over the rest of the savannah. Zazu, a small blue bird with a large beak, flaps to the ledge. He bows to Mufasa, a powerful, dignified lion with a thick red mane. Rafiki, an elderly baboon with white hair, slowly climbs up to the ledge and hugs Mufasa warmly. They walk back to a cave where Mufasa's wife, Sarabi, cuddles a tiny lion cub in her paws.
One thing I know I just said about not speaking over words or songs, when there's a chorus, that's permitted. But when it's just the regular lyrics, well, when I say permitted, it's okay. But for the regular lyrics, it's typically not. And I wanted to show that because that was an animated cartoon. I believe then the next slide will have the other descriptions on it. Just in light of time, so next slide. Let's skip the national park one. I just want to show the Maud Noble Cabin one, and maybe just do maybe 25 seconds of this. The reason this one I want to show is because there's no visual at all in this description. So we are all getting the same thing, whether we have vision or we don't.
Maud Noble Cabin. You are standing in front of the Maud Noble Cabin, a rustic brown 4-room cabin with a cobblestone chimney on the left end, surrounded by large cottonwood and spruce trees. The cabin has a small front porch and 2 bench seats. The 6 by 12 inch sign contains.
Thank you. This could be another use of description. That description is by the National Park Service, and it's to be used with people who are doing a walking tour in this particular historic or recreated part of some state park. But it could be used by individuals with mobility impairments who cannot get physically back on this walking tour because the paths are inaccessible. So these individuals, people with mobility impairments, would still have a way to hear about what is being seen. So the last one I want to show is dance. It's Dumar moth dance. And the thing I want to let people know about dance, although we're going to be able to see what some of those of us with vision are going to be able to see what's on the screen, with dance, everything cannot be described. And in addition to just describing dance, it's also important to describe costumes, background, props, and settings that are sometimes being used. So maybe just do about 45 seconds of the moth dance, please.
Flecked white text on a black screen reads Bangara. A crouching man and woman rise slowly. Text, Duma, moth. They stare passively ahead and lift one arm, then the other, then both in unison, repetitively. The man wears a sheer brown sheath of material around his waist. The woman a sheer blue sheath. Their eyes are masked with brown paint. They move in unison, their arms becoming more widespread. Their movements are smooth but brisk. The wall behind them is decorated with a print of large brown feathers.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please.
Okay, this is Renee.
Go ahead, Renee. I'm sorry.
I'm on.
No,
okay.
you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead.
Okay, our last example of how audio description works. This is an example of community art, and audio description is really important to be able to enjoy the various art and statues and things that are distributed around our cities and our communities. So this one happens to be Major the Bull. And the bull is a mascot for the city of Durham, North Carolina. And some of you may know they have a minor league baseball team called the Durham Bulls. And there was a movie, Bull Durham, that was made about that. And so the bull is their symbol or mascot. And Becky is going to read an audio description of this particular piece of community art.
And this is Rebecca. So before I describe it, I want to say one of the important things that trained describers learn is you describe what you see. A describer does not allow their personal biases or any hang-ups they may have come into play when you're providing a description. Also, as well as though it won't be so much important here, but describers should not interject emotions, what they feel somebody's emotion is, and that's more into live theater or something like that. But here's a description of Major the Bull. The bull rests on a 7-foot circular platform made of brick. The platform is 16 inches off the ground on the side with the head and 21 inches tall on the opposite side near the tail. You can sit or stand on it to touch the bull. The bull stands about 10 feet above the platform. The tip of the bull's horns are about 8 feet above the platform as well. Major the bull is cast of bronze and is mostly very smooth. It is particularly muscular and vascular. Its head is turned to the left away from its body. Its tail hangs almost straight down, while its left foot is a bit forward relative to the right. It looks as though it has stopped while walking because something in the distance has caught its eye. The eyes are wide open and the mouth resembles a frown. The horns and ears are parallel, pointing straight out to each side of its snout. Like a real bull, a prominent feature is its large scrotum hanging down between the rear legs. So that's why I said, you know, somebody might be squeamish about using the word scrotum or even describing that part of anatomy, but it's very important in this sculpture. So you have to describe what you see. Next slide.
Okay, this is Renee. And as I said when we were doing our little walk down memory lane and looking at the history, that we were going to come back to what is the future of audio description in the United States. And we've touched upon a little of that, but we're looking at the current status, where we are now and where we hope to move ahead and get to. And that's what I want to touch on very quickly here. The American Council of the Blind has been really promoting audio description, not just the use of audio description, but the attention to elevating audio description to professional status, so that those of us who need that as our accommodation for effective communication will have it much more highly recognized and provided, and that it will be systematic and standardized. So that's where we are aiming to go, and ACB is a wonderful resource for that. If you want to look at their website, it's simply acb.org, and they have all kinds of information there about audio description. Also, we were looking at the history, and we left off with the fact that in California, they actually adopted standards in 2006. Now we're 14 years down the road. Where are we now? We are still seeking the certification of audio describers, so that there will be elements like entry-level competencies, certain specific skills and knowledge that are required by those standards, and that there will be the inclusion of consumers like me to provide the feedback on how effective is that communication, so that we can have qualified audio describers, just the same as people with hearing loss can request and get the accommodation of qualified sign language interpreters. So that's the track that we're on, and that's where we would like to arrive at. And in the progress toward that, there is an expert committee on audio description subject matter that is at work right now as we speak. I've been in contact with a couple of members of that committee just recently to get a status update on where they are now. And this is the report they gave me, that they are finalizing their documents right now, and those documents will be reviewed by another committee. And the quote they gave me was, "We're getting there, but we still have several months to go." So we can most likely expect that these standards will at least be introduced, not adopted, but maybe perhaps introduced in the first few months of the next year, somewhere around that timeline. So I would say, if you're really interested in keeping track on this issue, to consult the acb.org, the American Council of the Blind website, and they will have continual updates on where we are in the progress toward elevating audio description to the professionalism that we all need and desire, and hopefully that is where we're headed. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Becky.
Yeah, so this is Rebecca. Excuse me. I personally am really happy that this group is working on developing a certification process and standards for audio describer. As I mentioned, I am a professionally trained describer, have been describing for over 20 years. And as Renee explained in the history, description started in 1974 in the United States. And overall, just description is still not viewed as a legitimate profession by many individuals. Many people think, oh, anybody can describe this or anybody can describe that. And there really is, if you lack a better term, best practices in how, excuse me, description services should be provided to individuals. So I'm really excited about this. I know this process is going a little bit slower than they anticipated originally, but they are moving forward. And so I think this is a great thing. You know, there's still a lot of questions about those who already have been trained. I don't want to say grandfathered in, but, you know, what are we going to have to do versus somebody really new? But that will be all for this group to work out. I think both Renee and I would like to encourage anybody who uses description services or would like to use description services, maybe contact the folks working on the ACVREP, the folks developing the certification, and give them your input and your thoughts on this. And individuals with vision loss or for whatever reason think you may be able to benefit from description, ask for it. You've got to ask for it at state and local government functions or in your theaters, in your live performances, in your museums. You got to ask for it to let people know that this is a right that you have, and to get businesses and state and local governments thinking about their requirements for providing effective communication. And I guess we will go to the next slide. Which
Are there
on the
any
next
questions?
Right, the next slide is a visual of what looks like dice cubes with question marks on every side of the dice cubes, and they're in all different colors: blue, green, red, yellow. And so, yes, are there any questions, Scott?
Yes, we have several here. First one is from Stephen Strickland. I have a two-part question. What kind of equipment can we use radio description, and where would the funding be available to purchase said?
I'll start. This is Rebecca. I'll start first. I don't know the technical terms for all the types of equipment. I have used something that looks like a stenographer's mask in one setting. I have used just a regular microphone, and I'm not a technical person, so my contact information, I think, is going to be on the very last slide, and I can get some of that information to you. But there's a variety of types of equipment that can be used. Funding, I don't know of any specific.
Oh, go ahead.
Funding, I was going to give you a chance to, Renee. Funding, I don't know of any specific grants. I'm sure there are. I think you would maybe work with your arts councils, your state arts councils. I know that I mean, I can't call to mind, but I know that there are grants or have been in the past to increase access to arts for individuals with disabilities. Also, if you're a business like a theater, when I say theater, I'm thinking arts theater, not movie theater. Individuals can take advantage of tax credits or tax deductions. There are ADA tax incentives if people wanted to search that, and there's a document that can pull up. So individuals who provide auxiliary aids and services for effective communication can get a tax credit or a tax deduction each and every year that they spend money to provide, in this case, audio description. And I'm sure Renee has something to add to that.
And really quick, Renee,
Well,
before you jump in, I just wanted to let everybody know we have several questions. You all have a ton of questions about this. So what we're going to do, I'll turn it over to Renee to finish this answer, but I'm going to send these questions to Renee and Becky, and then they can answer them, and we'll post it with the recording on the website as well, so you can get some answers to those questions, because we won't have time to get to all of them. Go ahead, Renee.
Okay, great idea. This is Renee. I just wanted to add that Arts Access Incorporated, which is a organization here in North Carolina. They have been doing a lot of audio description for years. And if you're going to get equipment, I'm not sure exactly what your needs are, but there are transmitters and there are receivers. For people like me sitting in the audience, we have receivers and all. And those can be run, like Becky was saying before, on one of two different methods. One of them is a radio frequency and one of them is an infrared. So I'm not going to go into all the details, but if you wanted to contact me, and I can put you in touch with the equipment person from Arts Access, and they could better assess what exactly are your needs. Okay.
Okay, well, it is 11 o'clock, so our time is up, and thank you.
Scott,
Yes.
I think we have one more slide, maybe with our
Okay.
information on it, or maybe not.
I didn't have it. It's not on there. Sorry.
Oh,
But
Okay.
I did drop Becky's email into the chat, and I can post it also on the website afterwards with everything.
great. Thank you, Sierra.
And Sierra, you can drop my Gmail email
Okay,
address.
I didn't know if
into
you
the-
wanted me to, so I wasn't going to until I asked. All right, I'll do that as well.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Well, I want to say, I guess Scott has to finish up there, but I want to thank everyone who joined us today. I hope we provide you guys with some information that you will find useful. And I'll speak for myself and maybe Renee too. We do encourage you to get with us then once you get our contact information if you have additional questions on this.
And this is Renee. I do want to thank everybody for joining us today, and I hope that you're all excited now about audio description. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Scott and Sierra.
Thank you.
And if everybody could just remember to fill out the evaluation, and to show up when we end the call. Thank you all.
Thanks.